All right, let's go. Chapter 8 of the book of Proverbs today. Chapter 8, we're going to be looking at wisdom and some of the cry for wisdom as found in chapter 8. What I'd like to do is cover chapters 8 and 9 because they definitely go together. Wisdom crying out with her voice to the simple-minded, to the sons of men, that they listen to her. Wisdom in this case, in these chapters is, and in many of the chapters in Proverbs, is identified as a woman. Of course, this is the kind of woman that you want in your life, not the strange woman, as opposed to the strange woman, as we found in chapter 5 and chapter 6 and chapter 7. The evil woman, the evil person, is also shown as a woman, but it's a strange woman. And so wisdom is identified as a woman. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places. I'm reading in chapter 8 there. But so wisdom is identified as a woman, and she's crying out. In chapters 8 and 9, you'll see, as we look at that, at these two chapters, the cry of wisdom being put forth, pleading with the simple-minded, pleading with the young man. And so that's a wonderful thing. As I enjoy teaching this, especially to young people like you, young men. It's not me pleading with you to seek after wisdom, but it's God's word. And it's Solomon pleading with his son, who obviously didn't listen. Right? Rehoboam, Solomon, some of this, no, it'd be Solomon. Rehoboam was not very wise. Remember what he did? That was so very unwise. When the old men came and said, can you lower the burden? Can you lessen the burden? He didn't listen to that. And I don't know that this is written exactly to Rehoboam, but it was Solomon had many, many sons because he had many, many wives. But anyway, so it's written to young men, pleading with them to seek after wisdom. Okay, so we're going to look in chapter 8 here first. I've got 7 main points in chapter 8. Usually our chapters have only a few main points. This is one of those that has quite a few main points. So we're going to see a lot of things about wisdom here. First, let's dive right in. First 3 verses. Here we see wisdom's cry. Wisdom's cry. In chapter 1, we saw a similar plea as we find here in chapter 8. Chapter 1, verse 20. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. Well, in chapter 8, she cries by the way in the places of the paths. That's the roads. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city. So we see in chapter 1, verse 20, wisdom crying in the streets. She cries in the chief place of the concourse, in the openings of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words. I'm in Proverbs chapter 1. So we see wisdom's cry in chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. Note down a few main places where wisdom cry is at. The Bible says that wisdom cries without. Wisdom cries without. Outside your home. We need wisdom. She also cries in the streets. What do you do in the streets? Now, in our day, we just fly through the streets, right? You know, our doors are closed, our windows are closed. But in those days, people going along the streets communicated with people going by. You know, nowadays, if you drive by somebody and try to communicate with them, they'll think you're real weird. You wave at them, they'll probably give you the one finger wave back or something, They'll think you're real weird. Yes?
It makes me think of back when they used to have town criers, and that was the way that they got important information about what was going on in the news.
Okay. I will get to that, but absolutely, that's a part of it. In the streets, I don't think is where we see that. There's another one here that we'll see in the gates is exactly that. But anyway, so in the places of the paths, as you're going about your business, and in those days, they communicated as they're going along on the street. They'd wave at people. They'd stop and say hi to them. You slowly clip, clop, going by or walking by them. You know, things come up. And there you need wisdom, and just in your routine business. Third, we see you need wisdom in the top of the high places, the chief place of the concourse. And this would probably be in reference to something like that, or to some speaker, somebody who's, and Paul did this, and many other people in the Bible you see doing this, where they get up and they speak publicly and proclaim something loudly. Prophets sometimes did this. And here wisdom is calling out from that location, the chief place. Fourth, in the openings of the gates, or in the city gates. And this is, I think, also definitely has to do with, like Trevor mentioned, a crier, somebody who speaks out loudly and gives out information, or lets people know what's going on as town council is doing or decide. Lots of business of the city. And in that condition, you need wisdom. At the entry of the city, that'd be the gates, as it's put in chapter 1. So what is wisdom doing here? Notice it's not just at home, where we certainly do need wisdom at home with our families and things, but in our business of our lives, as we're going throughout our day-to-day activities, walking down the street, and in every location, wisdom is necessary. We need wisdom for everything that we do. It's a really silly idea that we have our spiritual side and then we have our personal side. Oh, no. Everything is supposed to be run under the direction of the Lord and under the direction of the Holy Spirit, all throughout our life. So wisdom is out in public, pleading with people to get wisdom. That's their cry. By the way, that cry, remember in chapter 1 we talked about, that's a shrill screaming for, it's not a child's cry, begging, will you please get, crying, asking people. No. It's shouting out. It's a cry. It's a shrill sound. Secondly, wisdom's call. We see that in verses 4 through 11. Wisdom's cry in verses 1 through 3. Now we see wisdom's call. Verse number 4. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. So let's talk about this call here. First, I want to ask you the question, who should hear wisdom's call? Who should hear wisdom's call? Well, the answer, of course, is all sons of men. The sons of men, sons of man, as it's put in verse 4. That's the sons of Adam. Sons of every man is or needs wisdom. Any man who's living needs wisdom, and we all demonstrate a lack of wisdom, and so we need wisdom. In chapter 1, verse 22, the simple man is called to wisdom. We all need wisdom. But notice also this call to wisdom. Notice the content of that call. The content of that call. Verse 5, by the way, I didn't finish the thought. Unto you the men, the sons of man, all the sons of Adam. Verse 5, then, O ye simple and ye fools. Okay, so that's who hears the call of wisdom. Now, the content of wisdom's call is found in verse number 6. Hear, for I will speak. Wisdom is the voice speaking out. And wisdom says, I'm going to speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. Now, there's two parts of this. There's the excellent and there's the right. Now, let's talk about what it means to have excellent speech. There's several things that are brought out in other passages. I'll mention those, but that's not the primary purpose of this. The word excellent there literally has to do with a king or a prince. So, wisdom says, I'm going to speak excellent things. Things that are spoken in the presence of a king. Things that are spoken in the presence of a prince. Princely things. So, I just think it's an interesting correlation here. When we have wisdom, it affects the things that we say and how we say things. When we say things excellently, we're speaking with wisdom. If somebody is always saying things that are of little value, that's what's in their heart. They don't have wisdom. When somebody is always trying to be funny or joking or something like that, that's not excellent. Unless you want to be known as a court jester in the presence of the king. Certainly not. We need wisdom to speak the right things. But wisdom and speaking, they go hand in hand. I think that's a very important thing to understand there. So wisdom's call is an excellent thing. It has excellent content. Let me just throw these out to you. Psalm chapter 8, verse 1 says that the name of God is excellent. Excellent. Excel. Isaiah chapter 28, verse 29 talks about the excellent works of God. His works are excellent. See, God is excellent. He's not just excellent, I guess. He's beyond that. He's perfect. But everything that God does, there's a higher quality to it than what we do. Job 37, verse 23 talks about the excellent attributes of God. Psalm 36, verse 7 says that God is perfect in justice, judgment, and loving kindness. See, those are the attributes of God, and He's excellent in these things. And so if we're going to be wise, wisdom is calling us to speak with an excellent voice, an excellent tongue. All right, so the content of wisdom's call, part of that is excellent. Then also in verse 6, the opening of my lips shall be right things. Or the word there could be righteous things, good things, clean things. I'm going to watch what we say, that it's clean and appropriate. So the content of wisdom's call. All right, wisdom also, let's talk about its character, the character of wisdom's call. Let me mention some things here. Verse 7, for my mouth shall speak truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. So these kind of go along with the content, and they're definitely related here. Some of the things that describe the character of wisdom's call. First, it's truth. It's truth. Wisdom, it always speaks truth. Avoid falsehoods. Avoid slight falsehoods that we call exaggerations. We're all guilty of this, aren't we? I never exaggerate. There I go, right? We're all guilty of exaggerating and changing the story to make it a little bit more attractive or whatever. Man, we gotta watch that. Wisdom is truth. Wisdom doesn't speak wickedness, as we see in verse number 7. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. Well, we ought to hate wickedness, and any mention of wickedness ought to be, disgusting to us. Abomination. Wisdom speaks in righteousness, verse 8 says. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. So another characteristic of our wickedness, of our wisdom, is that we speak in righteousness. There's nothing froward or perverse. The word froward means perverse. I used to work with a couple guys. I was building grain bins. Country boy, we're putting up grain bins. Oh my goodness! Number one, I grew up in a Christian home in a Christian school, and I was very sheltered. And I started working with these guys, and I think every third or fourth word literally was a cuss word. And they just talked about the filthiest things. I was 18 years old and driving them to the work site because they were 25 and something years old, and they had their license suspended for drunk driving and all this kind of stupidity. So I'm this new guy in the block, 18 years old, driving this big truck and trailer and them to work. They knew how to do the work, and I was just a helper, at that point still. But you talk about foolishness, just perverse. Everything they said was disgusting. Boy, we got to keep that out of our lives and keep that away from our children. I really believe in protecting our kids from that kind of stuff. They'll learn it soon enough. They'll hear those things and so on. So we got to keep that from them as long as we can. And teach them the wickedness of it. Teach them that this is something you should never even want to say, avoid. And then lastly, another characteristic of wisdom, that it speaks wisdom itself. They are all plain to him that understandeth. The words of wisdom are plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. So, speak wisdom. That's another characteristic of having wisdom. All right, let me mention one other thing about the call of wisdom here, and that is that there's pleading in wisdom's call. This is still underneath the second main point, wisdom's call. There's pleading in wisdom's call. Verse 10 and 11. Receive my instruction and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. It's important to try to set money aside for savings. It's important to plan your life a bit. It's important to have some things in place. But if we put more priority on that than we do on wisdom as a young person, then our priorities are misplaced. Literally. Make wisdom the priority. It's better to have wisdom than it is to have a large bank account. It's better to have wisdom than to have a good job opportunity. Boy, we hear so much in our world about job opportunity and careers and college. It's more important to have wisdom than a college education. Wisdom is better than gold and silver and all the things that may be desired. Anything you can think of. When I say that, I think of Ecclesiastes. He had everything he could have wanted, and he wasn't happy with it. If he'd have been happy with wisdom, he'd have been happy later on in his life. So there's pleading in wisdom's call to choose wisdom above everything else. Money, possessions, relaxation, vacation, fun. There's nothing that surpasses wisdom. Okay, so wisdom's cry, wisdom's call. And third, now let's talk about wisdom's counsel. Wisdom's counsel. Verses 12 through 16. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding, I have strength. By me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. Let me give you some thoughts here concerning the counsel of wisdom. Wisdom exists alongside prudence. Make a note of that prudence. Let me give you a definition for that. Does anybody think they know what that means? What does it mean to be prudent? That's an old word, isn't it? That we don't use a lot anymore. Have you ever been called an old prude? Yes?
It's kind of the idea of this part of it is being able to assess the situation and respond to that situation. Whereas you were going one way and then you saw this, so you kind of changed what you were doing.
Change your approach. Anybody else?
I was kind of thinking kind of along the same lines of thinking through something before you do it a lot. That way, no matter what the situation that comes up, you know how to react in a good way.
Thinking ahead is probably a good way to summarize both of those. Being able to think ahead and know what's going to happen and change your plan accordingly. See if that matches what I have here. Intellectual insight. The idea of insight is exactly that, being able to see ahead and say, okay, this is a good move, this is not a good move. Discretion, it's related to discretion. Anybody play chess? I haven't played chess in years, but that's the name of the game in chess, is to see ahead and see what your opponent's going to do and see what I need to do. Steps several moves in advance. Am I right on that? How many moves in advance? What do they say? 3 moves in advance? That's because you're not a genius.
That's about what I do.
No, I'm kidding. but I would guess that real professional chess players probably know more than that, probably 5, 6, 7 moves in advance. They're really intent. And man, I used to get so mad at my brother because I'd try to checkmate him, and he always seemed to know how to get out of it because I'd make a dumb move and oh yeah, I'm going to get him here, and bam, you know how it is. Bad move. Oh man, I hated it. But that's the name of the game that's the picture here of prudence, I think, is seeing steps ahead, and sometimes experience gives you prudence. You can tell, you say, well, I've done that in the past. I've got to make sure not to do that because I know where that's going to take me. And you can apply this in so many areas that a young person, you need prudence. You need wisdom, another name, it's very related to it. You need insight. By the way, that's why we have standards. Breaking a standard itself is not where the wrong takes place. A standard is there to keep us from sinning. So why do I need prudence? That prudence will help me to say, hey, I need a chaperone on a date. Is it wrong to be by yourself with a girl? Well, it depends on where you are. If you're by yourself at the store, that's one thing. But if you're by yourself, that's not a good situation. And so prudence sees ahead and says, hey, this is what I have to do to protect myself from sin. Okay, so it's intellectual, moral insight, discretion, wisdom exists alongside prudence. Secondly, another thing concerning wisdom's counsel. Wisdom is wise and figures out plots. Verse number 12. And find out knowledge of witty inventions. I like the old English phrase there. Wisdom is wise and figures out plots, witty inventions. Now, this is a king writing to his son. For us, we would say, witty inventions, what's the big deal? But for a king, it was very important to figure out plots and sub-stories and so on like that, subplots and so on. It's really interesting to me that he says this in relation to what his son was going to go through. Solomon had a lot of wisdom in dealing with his enemies. Remember? What did that be? 1 Kings, I think it is, where he's dealing with all of these enemies of his father, or not just enemies of his father, sorry. People, some of them were, Shimei, but some of them just had a grudge against their family, and so he's working around these things, and of course Joab was what is that? That's finding out knowledge of witty inventions, the plots that were going on, being warned about them, figuring them out. So wisdom is wise in that area. Wisdom warns us that God hates secret evil. Verse number 13, fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride and arrogancy and the evil way and the froward mouth do I hate. Now I mentioned, before I said evil, I mentioned secret evil. That's the picture here in verse 13 of this evil. It's not out in the open evil. It's within the heart evil. Pride, arrogancy, evil way, the froward mouth, it's working its way out. But it starts in the heart, where it's not very obvious, but it's there. Secret evil is the meaning of that. Fourth, wisdom also counsels us to come to wisdom for understanding. Wisdom counsels us to come for wisdom. Verse 14, counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. Now, why would he tell us that? Why would wisdom say, hey, I have lots of good counsel. I have lots of wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. Well, the obvious reason is so that we will come to it for these things. So, verse 15 and 16 then is the fulfillment of that. By me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, nobles, even all the judges of the earth. All princes and rulers and nobles and kings seek after wisdom, good kings and princes. They seek after wisdom and counsel so that they can run their kingdom the right way. So if kings need it, so do we. Everybody needs this kind of counsel in wisdom. So you notice these are things that are even related to wisdom. Prudence is related to wisdom. Counsel is very much connected with wisdom. Number 4, another C for wisdom. Wisdom's charity. Verses 17 through 21. Boy, wisdom is, the whole point of the passage is you need wisdom, right? You need wisdom. And here's why you should get it. Have you ever talked to a financial guy? We used to once in a while have somebody come into our house and try to get us to buy something, or, a vacuum cleaner salesman. I think of that. You got to have this vacuum. And he'd take our vacuum that in our house, and he'd vacuum the floor, and he'd, I forget, but he'd take out a little bit of dirt. He'd show us how much it vacuumed up. And then he'd take his, $1,800 vacuum, and he'd vacuum the same floor that had just been vacuumed by our vacuum, and then he'd dump out into a cup, and he'd show us all the dirt that was just sucked out of the carpet that had just been cleaned before with ours. You need this. I mean, this is a good deal for $1,800. You can have this great vacuum, or whatever it was, and we bought one. I know at least once. Shoo, man! I mean, how can you not be impressed, right? That all of this dirt and all the stuff in the air is going to be cleaned up. Man, oh man, this vacuum is amazing. Excuse me. What's the point? You need it. You need it. This is something you need. And wisdom here in this chapter and the next is crying out, you've got to have wisdom. Seek after wisdom before you get a career, before you think you have an occupation or a college degree or anything else, a position. Seek wisdom. You need me. And this is much more valuable than a stupid vacuum. That's for sure. All right, wisdom's charity. Here's another reason you should seek after wisdom. Verse 17. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Boy, that's a great promise. You want wisdom? You can have it. You will get it if you seek it. That's a promise from God. It's a promise from the Bible. So I challenge you, seek after wisdom. How do you seek after wisdom? This is not in the notes. How do you seek after wisdom? Counsel. So when you have a decision to make, even smaller decisions, get some counsel. What else?
God's Word.
God's Word. Be in it. Prayer. Do it every day. Every day. Seek God to give you wisdom in your prayer, and ask God for it every day. Anything else?
Observe others.
Sorry?
Observe
others. Watch other people's example. Yes, absolutely. Good and bad examples. So, boy, seek after wisdom. This is a great promise. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of the judgment, that I may cause those that love me, love wisdom, to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. So, wisdom's charity. Let me just make 2 points here. Wisdom loves and rewards those who love it. Wisdom loves and rewards those who love it. What does it mean to seek it early? There's a couple of meanings with that.
First, make it a priority.
Priority-wise, seeking it first.
Early in your life.
It could be early in your life or early in the day, like something you do, the first thing you do on, something that you see. So those are the meanings. It goes right along with the idea of those who spank their children early. That doesn't mean early in the morning, even though that does happen sometimes. But it means that they make it a priority, and it's something that happens. It's very important. Excuse me. So wisdom loves and rewards those who love it. Secondly, wisdom leads in ways with rewards and blessings. Man, wisdom brings so many blessings to it. Seek after it. Wisdom has fruit that's better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. My goodness, seek after wisdom. It's a real challenge to us to make wisdom the first priority. All right, let's keep on moving. Wisdom's picture of Christ. Wisdom's picture of Christ. Wisdom is Christ. Christ is wisdom. I feel sorry for the millions of American young people who think that if they can go to a high-level college or a university, that will be their ticket to success. And they go through that and they become, liberalized, and they become smart in their own conceits and self-pride and so on. They might have good jobs, they might have good money, good income most of their life, lawyers and all these kinds of things, especially around Washington, D.C. area. They can have all that stuff, but what they lack are the things that will bring them true happiness. And so we need Christ in our wisdom. Obviously, that is what we believe is wisdom. The Bible teaches us that. So, and this passage is very clear. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's about 10 verses. But notice here, verse 22, the Lord possessed me, wisdom, in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was, when there were no depths, and so on. You know the verses probably. I'm sure you've read them. Let me just give you these points. Wisdom existed before creation. Wisdom existed with Christ before creation. Wisdom also is eternal, no beginning or ending. It's eternal. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning. Wisdom is older than the mountains. And it lists off some other areas of, what's the description here? Mountains, water, hills, fields, the dust. So wisdom is older than the first day of creation when God created all those things. Wisdom also was there on day 2 of creation. So what was on day 2? Anybody remember? Air and water, right? Air and water and land divided. Verse 25, before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. Verse 24, when there were no fountains abounding with water. Verse 26, while as yet he had not made the earth, the fields, the highest part of the dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. And so on. Before day 2, wisdom was there. Wisdom was there on day 6. What happened on day 6? Let's see here. 30. Then I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. So wisdom was there before any of the days of creation. That's the point. Wisdom is eternal. Wisdom has always been there, and you can have it. Seek after it. Wisdom is better than money. It's better than the Iraqi dinar. Okay? It's not a false promise. That's my point. The dinar is a false promise, in my opinion. It's not a false promise. It's a real promise. It's something that you can actually lay your hands upon and handle and have. So wisdom's a picture of Christ. It was there from eternity past. So, number 6, wisdom's charge. 32 through 34, wisdom's charge. Now therefore, hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. Hear instruction. So the point is, listen. Listen attentively with interest, obeying what I'm telling you. Listen attentively with interest. And another thought with this is daily watch. Verse 34, blessed is the man that heareth me. You're listening for wisdom. You hear me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my door. What? How do you wait daily for wisdom? How do you sit outside a gate and say, no, I'm not moving here until wisdom comes out and meets me here? You understand? It's a spiritual application, I believe, that you come to God every day and say, God, I've got to have you today for wisdom. Please, I got to meet you. I got to have wisdom before I go about making decisions. And so you pray and you wait daily for wisdom until you get it. So hear and listen attentively, and then watch daily, waiting for wisdom. I think it's a great charge there. You better get wisdom before you do anything. Number 7, wisdom's choice. The choice that you have, verse 35 and 36. Whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord, but he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. So you can search for wisdom and find it, and you will get it. Or you can sin against your own soul and hate wisdom. That's your choice. So I hope you choose the right thing. Hope you seek after wisdom by rejecting sin, rejecting wrongdoing, rejecting unrighteousness, and gaining wisdom. Okay, so that's the choice set out for us in verses 35 and 36. All right, so wisdom's saying, hey, you need me. I'm the best thing out there. I always have been, always will be. You better get wisdom. And young men, you need wisdom. All right, chapter 9 then is going to continue with this. Wisdom crying. And the difference in chapter 9 is that we see the opposite side of wisdom as well. Wisdom saying, hey, you need me, I'm the best. I have the best to offer. And on the other side then is foolishness. And foolishness says, boy, you need me because I'll make you happy right now. And so there's these two opposing ideas. Wisdom crying and foolishness clamoring. That's the name of my chapter here. Wisdom says, cries out, says you need me. Foolishness clamors, makes noise. You need me too. And so we'll look at that. All right, so wisdom cries out in chapter 9, and foolishness clamors. And this will be another plea of wisdom, a couple different turns and twists from chapter 8. So in this chapter, I'm going to look at 3 main sections. First, we're going to see the invitation to wisdom, and then the instruction of wisdom, and then the insight into foolishness. So we'll look at wisdom as opposed to foolishness is the general direction of the chapter. The invitation to wisdom. All right, chapter 9 starts out in a little different way here. Wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beasts, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens, and crieth, or she crieth, upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live. And it continues to cry. So, this invitation to wisdom. Let me point out a couple things about this invitation. First, we see wisdom's preparation. She prepares before she goes out calling for people to come and get wisdom. She prepares. What does she do? First, the Bible says that she builds her house. She builds her house. What in the world does that mean? Wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. Anybody? Yes?
She's making ready for those who come to her seeking after her.
Okay, sure. And take it further from there.
It's complete, I guess. Or
You're looking at the 7 pillars. 7?
no.
Complete, the number of perfection. Anyway, yes?
Well, I think some of this might be kind of, you could contrast it with the strange woman who's in the streets and all that stuff.
Yes.
Whereas wisdom is, she's fully prepared for anybody who come to her. You come to her and she's got everything all laid out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there it is.
Okay, so think of a foolish young man who wants to get married. And he says, man, I got a lot to offer, man. I'm a good-looking guy. Or would you rather have the young, not you, but would you admire a young man much more who says, I own my own house, I'm settled, I have a place, I have something to offer, not just my good looks. Trevor?
Just a thought that
Mm-hmm.
she has her house in one place, so people, if you're seeking it, you're going to find it, but it's
Mhm.
not like the strange woman who goes out seeking you.
Yeah.
You have to go to the place where wisdom.
That's a great point. Great point. I think this is just another way of saying wisdom has a lot to offer. Wisdom hath builded her house. And guess what? You can live with her. You can stay at wisdom's house. I think that's, and like you said, I love that idea that wisdom isn't fidgety and moving all over the place. Oh no, it's settled. It's right there. You can find it. Whereas the strange woman is out seeking and on the street and has really nothing to offer. Says she has a bed filled with aloes, and it's not even hers, it's her goodman's. So there's a big difference in the settled nature of wisdom and the unsettled, chaotic lifestyle of foolishness. I like that point. She's builded her house. Also, it says she's hewn out her 7 pillars. Okay, what does that make you think of in light of what we're saying? That wisdom has something to offer.
Stability.
Right? What does it mean that it's hewn out?
Took a lot of work.
Took a lot of work.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful, absolutely.
It'd be, if you hid that yourself, it's something more precious to you than if you went and bought it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Better craftsmanship.
Better craftsmanship, better quality, strong, right? If it's stone and it's been hewn out, it's one stone. That's it. And there's always something special about a humongous stone. I just, man, that's not going anywhere. The wise man built his house upon a rock. Okay, a stone has always been a symbol of strength. The wise man built his house upon I sang it yesterday in my junior church. Man, you put it right there, a symbol of strength. Wisdom is a symbol of strength. It's a picture of your strength. And a young person that is wise is a solid, stable person. So wisdom hath hewn out her 7 pillars. When we were on Masada, let me back up. Many, many places in Israel, there are huge columns. And if you've ever gone to Washington, D.C. and the Lincoln Memorial and all them humongous, I mean massive columns. I mean unbelievable, sharp and strong. We went to Masada, and in the part where Herod built his part of his palace on that edge of the cliff, as we went down there and you look up, you can see these pillars. And you find out what's now you can find. Now we see that those pillars were not hewn stones. They were small chunks of stone stacked on top of each other, and then covered with a plaster to make them look like they were solid stone. And it's funny because you can clearly see every level going up. There's like 10 or 12 different stones stacked on top of each other and then made to look like hewn stone. Yeah, made in China. Yes, modern day version. He bought them on an Oriental Trading Company. But that's a perfect illustration, I think, that the wisdom is hewn out. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. Has a lot to offer. That's the point. Now, let me point out a couple things about the 7 pillars. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. Of course, the number 7 is a picture of perfection, a picture of completion. In the book of Proverbs, several times, there's 4 times where the book of Proverbs points out something 7 times, or 7 things. Can you think of some? These 6 things that the Lord hates, yea, 7 are an abomination. So there's 7 things that God hates. Chapter 6, verse 16. Anybody else? A just man falleth 7 times and riseth again. In chapter 26, too many pages. Chapter 26, verse number 16. 26, verse 16. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. I mean, you can have a perfect scenario, and a sluggard thinks he's wiser than all of them. 7 men that can give a good reason, that can render a reason. That doesn't just mean I have a reason. 7 of us saying I have a reason. No, these are 7 men that are reasonable and are smart enough to give their reason. In other words, that they can argue. They can argue with intellect and style. And the sluggard is still smarter than they are. Had that perfect illustration of this on Saturday. This guy at one of our bus houses, one of the people on the bus route, we were having a nice visit until he walked in the door. And he has to just take over the conversation and tell us all the things that he knows. He's living in a trailer park. And they pay $900 a month to live there. Lot fee and the housing. $900 a month? You could live in a nice house for $900 a month. Buying the house. So anyway, but what I was going to say is, so he's talking about how terrible these people are taking advantage of him, and these people are, and he starts to, I forget even what it exactly was that he told us, but he had to tell us something that he found out, he learned. I keep track of all these things. And he's just talking a mile a minute, and cursing every so often. And all of a sudden he's talking, I forget what he was talking about. Something, he's into conspiracies by the military and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden he said, you know where I learned that? I'm always paying attention to this stuff. You know where I learned that? On the History Channel. And we're like, oh. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men who can with skill render a reason. And he's still wiser. So the 7 there also. And then verse 25 of the same chapter, 26 verse 25. When he speaketh fair, believe him not. This is talking about the words of a talebearer. The talebearer. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. He's completely abominable. He's a complete fool. So there's some sevens. Well, just like the fool has perfect foolishness, he is completely foolish. Here's a wise person, and wisdom has 7 pillars. It's not just strong, it's perfectly strong. Isn't that great? I love that. Wisdom has a lot to offer. Wisdom has a house, strong, solid house, hewn out her 7 pillars. Also, third, it says there that, I need to go back to the passage in chapter 9. She hath killed her beasts, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. So the point is that she's preparing a feast. That's the killing of the beasts. That's what the prodigal son's father did when the prodigal son came home. They killed the fatted calf. They mingled the wine. They got the drink ready, and they prepared a feast. Wisdom has a lot to offer. Now, I think this is interesting. That Solomon says to a young man, I have a lot to offer. I have a feast waiting for you. Now, what young man doesn't want a feast? Right? Especially what young college student doesn't want a feast? So wisdom has a feast prepared. And then fourth, she's furnished her table. She's furnished her table. Remember what Solomon did in furnishing a table for his court? That's the picture you want to have. Do you remember what I'm talking about? What did Solomon do in preparation to furnish a table for his court? Every day, what did they do? Remember all the numbers of sheep and fallow deer and oxen. Oh, I forget all the things. I mean, tons and tons of animals every day. That's the picture. We're not talking, that they prepared a meal of spaghetti. Okay, this is a meal that took archers, it took preparation, it took a lot of people to prepare it. This kind of feast is the feast that wisdom is offering. Man, and when you think about that, wisdom has a lot to offer. That's the picture that we should be getting from these first few verses. Wisdom has built her house. She's got great things to offer you. Young men, seek wisdom. Wisdom's preparation. Secondly, wisdom's prominence. Her prominence. She sent forth her maidens, and she crieth upon the high places of the city. She sent forth her maidens, verse 3, and crieth on the highest places. Wisdom is prominently, not luring, inviting, there's the word. Prominently inviting people to come and partake of wisdom. Third, wisdom's proclamation. What is wisdom saying? Verse 4. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. That's what wisdom is saying. To the simple, turn in. Come on in. To those lacking understanding, come, eat of my bread, drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. I have all you need. I have all you need. To the young man, to the one lacking understanding, wisdom says, I have everything you want. I'll give you what you really want, not your physical, fleshly desires as much as what you really want from your life. All right, so that's the invitation to wisdom. All right, next, let's talk about the instruction of wisdom. Verses 7? Yes, verse 7 through 12. The instruction of wisdom. Oh boy, here we go. Instruction. Fun thing, right? What about instruction? Something that we don't really like. I remember I got to a point as a teenager, my dad would give instruction, And I knew better than to say it out loud, but I'm thinking, I know. And I've had young people like that here before. I tell them what to, oh yeah, I know. And you can just hear they didn't even hear a word you said. Because, then they do it all wrong and everything. I'm thinking of one person in particular. Oh, I know. No, you don't know. Listen and take instruction, receive instruction. So let's point out some things about the instruction that is involved in wisdom. Now, you say, well, oh yeah, I want wisdom. Wisdom is going to give me a house and with 7 pillars. I mean, lots to offer, right? Oh yeah, wisdom comes with instruction. You like that? You like that? If you don't like instruction, you can't have wisdom. So that's the point of verses 7 through 12, that with wisdom, with the getting of wisdom comes instruction. So let's point out a couple things. I want you to see here who wisdom instructs. Wisdom instructs. Ooh, here it is. Only a wise man. Everybody gets instruction. Everybody gets instruction. You all get instruction, but that doesn't mean you're wise. If you receive it, it means you're wise. Wisdom is received by a wise person. Verse 7. Let's point out a couple people. Wisdom also comes to a scorner. Verse 7. He that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame. Look at verse 8. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. So, this is not saying don't give instruction to a scorner. Because the Bible teaches in other places, Psalm 1, for example, that we are supposed to tell a scorner. They are going to get instruction. But what it's saying is, if you're a wise young man, you won't scorn. That's what it's saying. When you get instruction, don't scorn it, or you're a fool. You're one of the foolish crowd. So, point out a couple things here. Who wisdom instructs? Not a scorner. Wisdom does not instruct a scorner. The scorner, he'll embarrass you. Man, he'll get mad. He'll embarrass you. Verse 7, he that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, embarrassment. A parent who gives instruction to a foolish child, they're going to bring embarrassment to that parent. Child isn't going to do it. He's going to make a mockery of his parents. Rebuke not a wicked man. Verse 7, he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot, a stain. That's literally the word meaning there, the stain, a blot. You try to rebuke a wicked person, and he'll turn on you, and he'll try to cast a blot, a stain at you. I've met young people like this. You point out something about them, and they turn it right back, and they start looking at you and trying to find something on your reputation or your character. What are they doing? That's foolishness for them. I'm certainly not saying I'm perfect, and no authority is perfect. But when they turn around and they start pointing at you, they've just marked themselves. They're a wicked man. They're a foolish man. No, don't rebuke a wicked man. Don't instruct a wicked man. He'll turn around and he'll stain your reputation. He'll kick a blot in your direction. So, who should you instruct? A wise man. What's a wise man going to do with instruction? He's going to love you, and he'll be even wiser. Listen, so we should seek after wisdom. We should instruct wise young people. We should instruct young people. Give instruction to young people. Listen, I know you're young. I know you're not at the point yet where you're giving out a lot of instruction. But don't be afraid to give instruction. And I say that to seniors. Instruct some of these younger people. Instruct the freshmen and the sophomore. It could go for anybody, but don't be afraid to give instruction and say, hey, you shouldn't do that. If they get mad, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but if they get mad at you, I know you're close in age, and you're still kind of on the same you're not, but you're kind of on the same level. So you take it with a grain of salt, but get ready, because sometimes they'll turn around and they'll kick it at you. Well, you also do this. Rebuke a wise man, he'll love you, and he'll be yet wiser. That's fun to do, is to give instruction to a wise person. They take it the right way, and they become wiser for it. Who wisdom instructs? Not a scorner, not a wicked man, a wise man. Secondly, how wisdom instructs. How does wisdom instruct? It's through the fear of the Lord. Verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. This goes pretty deep here, but verse 10 is talking about a world view. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Everything we do should be in light of what does God say about this? What does God think about what I'm doing? And so everything is done with the Lord's opinion. The Lord, what does God want? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. This talks to our world view on things. So, how wisdom instructs? Through the fear of the Lord. Why wisdom instructs? Why does instruction come with wisdom? Verse 11. For by me, that's still instruction it's talking about. For by instruction, for by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou alone shalt bear it. Man, receive wisdom. It'll give not just quantity adding on to your life, but the quality of your life will be much, much greater. A lot of you, many of you, hopefully all of our students, but many of our students for sure go into full-time service. And for a few years, you'll be underneath authority of a pastor or somewhere, probably before you become the pastor yourself, if the Lord leads that way. Well, when you're doing that, you're going to get instruction. You're going to get some. The whip cracked at you a few times. Take it, learn from it. Don't immediately. Well, you also. No. It ought to be okay, even if it's not justified in your mind. They didn't have a right to say that. Well, take it. Receive instruction. Be glad for instruction. I'm glad that they said something. Even if I think they're wrong, I'm glad they said something. That means they care. You'll be wiser for that. Guarantee you. Now, let's talk about foolishness. Last few verses of the chapter. Verse 13. This is the insight into foolishness. So, wisdom is a woman, right? Chapter 8, chapter 9. But foolishness is also a woman. Look at what this is likened to. Verse 13. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. Now, don't go around accusing the girls in the dorm of this. Not a good way to influence or make friends and influence people. But the foolish woman is simple and knoweth nothing. Verse 14, for she sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city. Notice she's doing the same thing wisdom does in this sense. She's calling out. She's claiming to have lots to offer. To call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now notice the difference here. Stolen waters, secret bread. Wisdom, on the other hand, she also claims to have food, but hers isn't stolen and secret. Hers is a public feast. That's a warning. Anytime somebody says that they have something secret, something, this is only for the few, this is only, oh no, stay away from that, man. Just run from that. Because this whole idea of stolen and secret is always of the devil. It's always of the devil. Stay away from it. God is transparent and his ways are open. And wisdom has a public cry, not just for the few who can get this special privilege. Yes?
It sounds like foolishness is trying to kind of counterfeit and hide
Yes?
the foolishness by saying some of the same things wisdom says, but once you find out, then she's
Yeah.
completely the opposite.
Now look at the next verse. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. I mean, that's pretty final. So yeah, absolutely, that's a good point. This is a counterfeit that foolishness puts out there. Oh, I have food too. Yeah, dead bodies. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things as far as foolishness. First of all, the character of foolishness. Notice this woman is clamorous. Clamorous. Oh, what's a clamorous woman? Yes. Yes. What's the word that starts with a B? Boisterous. There you go. That's an old word too. Clamorous, it literally means boisterous, roaring, turbulent. That's the strange, that's not the strange, the foolish woman. So foolishness, isn't that it's so typical, it's so true. Think of a concert. Think of a party at a bar, right? Loud and everything's, yuck. I have no desire for any of that. I hope I never get one, loud, clamorous. This is fun, right? You go to that's the way it is. You go to a Bulls game or anything like, man, it's loud and everything's rocking and loud, roaring, and that's fun. It's dumb. It's foolishness. Clamorous, it means boisterous and loud. Another characteristic of foolishness is simple. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple. She's simple-minded and doesn't have any wisdom. And then it goes beyond that. It says she knows nothing. What does that mean?
She's all talk, but she doesn't.
These women that, are... Anyway, I could give you... We've talked about this before. Just empty, big mouths, empty heads. Empty heads. Knoweth nothing. Ignorant. That's the word. Ignorant. Has nothing to offer. Really, has nothing to offer. It's all talk. Characteristic of foolishness. Secondly, the call of foolishness. Hey, she calls out too. Where does she call? At the door of her house? In high places? See, she does the same thing in some ways. She does the same thing that wisdom does. Cries out for attention. Third, the character of foolishness, the call of foolishness. Third, the craft of foolishness. And I want to point out here that foolishness is a big lie. It claims to offer things, and it doesn't have anything there except death and hell. Hey, stolen and secret things are pleasant and exciting. No. It's like a haunted house. As soon as you step in the door, it's a whole different ballgame. Hell is mentioned here in verse 18. Her guests are in the depths of hell. The word hell there, it refers to death in general. I don't think it's referring to, it might be, but I don't think it's referring to the actual, what we call hell. But it's referring more to just in general, death. That word is found 7 times in Proverbs. And numerous times it's in reference to the foolish or the strange woman. And that her lie that she puts out, that everything's sweet and wonderful, and the bed myrrh and aloe, cinnamon. Yeah, the reality is as soon as you get past that, it's death and it's hell. So the craft of foolishness is a big lie. It's all a fraud. And if there's anything, how would you like to be taken by a phone scam? Right? I heard somebody recently got totally scammed in a phone scam. Oh, that'd make me so mad. Well, this is a bigger scam. You think you got pleasantry, you think you got good things in your life and lots of fun, sweet things, and the only thing that's there is death and hell. So, seek after wisdom. Seek after wisdom. Pray for wisdom. Get it every day before you do anything. Get wisdom. Make it your priority. You're young. You've got a whole life to live. The devil knows that, so he's going to try to ruin that by making you foolish and getting you to do dumb things. And we all do dumb things, but it shouldn't be a pattern. Man, it should be, we should learn from the dumb decisions that we make and gain wisdom and move on from those.